Hello, everyone. This is LeiLani Cauthen, the CEO of the Learning Council and a proud EduJedi Grandmaster. This is another EduJedi meeting, and we're going to be talking about the digital learning experience standards for students, and this focuses on being device tidy and respectful. Obviously, really key responsibilities for students right now, and this is the first set of standards to come out of the EduJedi about those topics for what needs to be done with students. So I have today with me Zack, Simmen, who's the Assistant Director of Instruction and Advisement from Edison, and we're waiting on Heidi Kaminsky from Calvert County Public Schools and Katie Bond from Martin County School District. We do realize that things are happening out there at a random pace in every school district, having been in Indianapolis this week and also Dallas and Atlanta a week before last. We really see what's going on for the leadership in schools. It's kind of the wild ride in terms of, are we going to be open today? Do we have enough bus drivers? Can we serve lunch? Do we have enough teachers? Just random emergencies happening daily. We even had a school with something happen that was kind of violent the other day, so the executive couldn't make their meeting. So we're hoping that Heidi and Katie join us. But in the meantime, Zack and I are going to get started with this discussion on these digital learning experience standards. So I'm just going to start with you, Zack. Give us a little background from that commercial side view of what's really going on in commercial grade professional software, because people really need to understand that when you have students learning in pro grade stuff, it's kind of a different experience, right? So over to you.
That sure is. With Edison Learning, we've been around for a number of years, and so we have a lot of experience. And I think one of the things that we're able to provide is obviously a solid foundation software that is inclusive, that is easily navigatable, but also support documents that help teach students how to use these things the correct way. We certainly have onboarding courses for students to kind of get them on the right track, to give them boundaries, to really teach them how to navigate and how to access all of the resources in our system that we provide our students. So, I personally think that we're very fortunate on the commercial grade side to have such structure, to have such experience. And Edison Learning, we really pride ourselves on offering those supports out there to all the schools that need them. So that's really what's going on. We're just trying to keep up and trying to stay on the cutting edge of what's going on out here on the education landscape as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were just talking to one of the Atlanta districts the other day that they had to put up an online learning option for all their students, but they run it sort of within the same pattern as live schooling. So they had to allocate all these teachers, and then they had to cap it, right? Because they didn't have enough staff. Whereas what the commercial side is doing, you're self-paced, right? So all of the courses, 150 some courses, are self-paced. And so you enter anytime,
Yeah, correct.
Enroll more students.
Yeah, and it's efficient, right? And we have a very efficient but personalized way of educating. And it's our teachers, we have a full teaching staff on board that are certified, highly qualified teachers that not only know education but know online specific education. I think I had a quick step. We have like 167 years of online teaching experience with our teaching staff. It's incredible. And so, yeah, right.
It's super old.
Yeah, it made me feel kind of old, but hey, yeah. It's something. It was something that was very enlightening, and to be able to have a program that was stable before this happened, right? Before school districts were scrambling. Last year it wasn't easy by any means, but it was at least we learned a lot, right? And we stayed with our program and it worked. And I think districts that are looking for the standalone solutions, I think we offer the services that we can come in and help keep education rolling, keep students learning, keep them engaged, and keep them happy too, safe.
Yeah, and give them more options. What I like about what's the thinking is now, and it should be in most districts, is that the digital learning experience for students, the demand now is like they want flexibility. You know, that maybe the older kid in the family has to take care of the younger kids during the day, or they have a job to help support the family, and they want to be able to do it anytime, anywhere. And a lot of school districts cannot execute on that. So really what the commercial side is doing is giving school districts the option to provide the same sort of levels of education with a tack on, right? Like, you know, you go into this alternate universe over here and you can get all the same education, and they could use their teachers to do it too, or use yours, right?
Yeah, so it's like an a la carte where you can use your own local teachers, or you can outsource to our teachers. We see every situation under the sun. So, you know, situations like you mentioned, but also students want to compete in snowboarding competitions, right? So they want to travel to Colorado and compete, and they can do that with our program, and then come back to the brick and mortar where all their resources are and stay in that brick and mortar, but still maintain that education. We have students that are living in France because their parents are working there, but they have a home here, and they want to stay in their district and keep ties with their district. And so we're highly flexible. And yeah, we see all of it. And we're happy to provide that flexibility. It really is what keeps us going. You know, when we see success for students that get to kind of live out their lives. So
it's awesome. Well, I'm going to make sure that I wrap you back in to do a little show and tell during the course of the hour as we talk about these standards. And it looks like we've had Heidi join. Hi, Heidi.
Here I am.
Hey, it's so good to see you again. How are you?
TGIF. It's been a rough month.
Yeah, we're hearing and seeing that everywhere, but it's good to sort of step out of that little loop and have a
Oh my
conversation.
gosh, you pulled a picture from more than a decade ago.
Did I? Well, you're still adorable today. Yeah, I don't know where we pulled the picture from. We do that kind of thing.
I know where that's from. I need to work on getting rid of that one, I guess.
Okay, we can move on from there, but let's just do that. Like, I'll go to another screen, but let's just say who you are. Heidi Kaminsky, from Digital Learning and Integration Specialist from Calvert County Public Schools, Maryland. Woo! Good to have you. It's been so long since I've seen you. We're going to be talking about the EduJedi dictionary and these standards today, but why don't you give us a little background on kind of what's going down for you guys right now?
So this year we have started fully in person with all students in classes with full-blown, here we go. Last year we had ended the year where we had half of the kids in 1 week and half of the kids another week. And so we've equipped all of our students, grades 3 through 12, with a one-to-one device. Last year was actually the first that we had done that. We had done a scaled up approach for those grades, and it worked out timing wise as far as the pandemic. Our K2 students, we've provided iPads in the classrooms, and when we needed to go fully virtual last year, we provided devices to families that didn't have one at home. We have a personalized digital program for our math and reading programs at elementary, and every one of our content areas, K-12, now has some sort of digital curriculum that they probably didn't have last year. We use Schoology as our primary platform, as a learning management system, and we've got a number of applications that we are integrating with that for use on the platform.
How many do you think?
How many different applications? Well, I'm on the approval process where I read every single privacy policy for things that we're approving. The number of approved apps that we have, I'm scrolling down, is currently 432. Whether or not those are all specifically used in classrooms with content directly is not always the case. We run every app that gets installed or has a user account through an approval process. So that's whether it's something for the food service folks or the maintenance folks, everything is on that list. So.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of reading for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I've had people say, why don't we standardize these privacy policies? What? Can't they just have like the same sections, you know?
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
standard data agreement from our state would be a big step in the right direction. So
Yeah.
we're not there. I know that there's places and spaces that do that. We are just entering the forays of, if the privacy policy doesn't say what we need it to say, what do we need to do as far as getting a contract in place that does say what we need it to say legally. So
yeah, I've been hearing that from other people. Plus, there's a lot of new flexibility needed from the vendors themselves now, in terms of like, I'm having, because I'm, maybe a district is partially still virtual, and they've sort of clumped kids from multiple schools together, but the company that sold them the app sells them only based on a site license.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not using site license constructs.
Right.
In terms of the cohorting of children. So it's like it's the Wild West out there for that stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
what we did this year was students that wanted to, we knew right off the bat we're not going to be physically in the buildings. We set up what we called a virtual academy program. We used Clever for much of our account provisioning, and Clever sees the virtual academy as a different school. So even though in our student information system, the students are enrolled in their school, the sections are clumped together, which makes them appear different. So every one of the vendors for grades 3 through 8, we needed to contact and work through whatever needed to be done to get virtual academy access, because those students need to get access to the curriculum the same as the kids sitting in the brick and mortar classrooms. So
it's a lot of logistics, like the picture
Yeah.
you're painting it. I'm like, I understand why you maybe are TGIF.
Yeah.
But again, it's really good to see you. So let's dig into this topic. And just so you know, we have with us here Zack Simmen, who is representing Edison Learning, who is online courses that are asynchronous, self-paced, and they're here to represent that professional grade commercial side as part of the discussion and the standards, because there's so much new stuff happening on that side. It's good to have both sides. So in terms of the standards, I'm going to stay on this slide. I'm going to go over to the document itself so we can start talking about them. And we had one other educator that we were hoping to join today, but like I mentioned earlier, people are living in the Wild West right now. So it's like never surprised us. Oh, couldn't make it. It's like, blah. So let's just talk about these. Have you seen these before, Heidi?
There are different types of digital learning standards. We are using the Florida Technology Matrix. We're also deeply invested with the ISTE standards for teachers, students, and administrators. So this is not new info, and it's something that we've been embedding primarily through our library experiences with students, as far as digital safety and things that students need to learn to be aware of in this day and age. We often use the Common Sense Media programs with the lessons that they have built in there. Across the whole K-12 continuum, there's discussion as far as passwords and access and keeping your info private and things.
Yeah, those are the digital literacy ones for Common Sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, help us then with these from the EduJedi. These are supposed to focus beyond digital literacy on responsibilities. And I think there's maybe a little crossover, but it's really, it mirrors what the administrator level and the teacher level did for now that you understand the digital matrix, like what all this layered 432 apps and systems and Schoology and all together, sort of looking at now your learning experience, navigating workflow wise amongst all of that. So it starts with this taking responsibility for being the correct level as an individual student. So it's starting to harness the viewpoint that now that we're digital, you have agency as a student. You're not just getting up to move when the bell rings and then people tell you what to do when you get in their classroom. It's a little bit of a different viewpoint. So you're in the right site or knowledge object, check sheet or course sheet to ensure your learning is not inhibited or being too advanced, I should say too advanced, or in edit mode, or too basic. So any comments on that from either one of you? Heidi, you go first.
Several of the apps that we use, like I mentioned, are adaptive based on the skills of the student. And so regular use of the app, 10, 15 minutes a day, helps that app to better be able to adapt to where your learning is this week. If you take a week off from it and you've learned stuff and you haven't used the app, usually, you know, you can get on level, so to speak, as far as where your productive struggle point is. I can see this in cases of students not having the apps available to them that they're being directed to use, or not having the courses that they're expecting to see on their Schoology classroom being available, and knowing where to go or what to do with that, as opposed to, oh, well, it's not there, so I guess I don't have to do it. And knowing reaching out to teachers is our first line of defense for students, for them to reach out. But we have a help desk that is district-wide, that parents, students, teachers, guardians can email in and get support. And that has been a new process for us that has evolved over the last year. And so that agency for whoever you are, taking agency for getting yourself figured out why you can't get logged in or how do you get logged in, I think goes along with that, as far as making sure that we're giving you all the tools that we can. And if you're not seeing them, if it's not set the right way, then you need to speak up and say something, that you're not seeing what you're expecting to have access to.
Okay, good. I made notes of all that so we can add a reference line in there to that particular point, which is, you know, it's supposed to appear. You know, if it's not appearing and you know, then you have to be active. Okay. Okay, good. Zach, any comments?
Yeah, and if you want to give me sharing abilities, I can kind of show you what our system looks like, because I think it would speak to this standard. And
okay, I'm going to stop for a second, then we'll go on to the next several. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And so, you know, what one of the nice features of our system is all this data is student facing. So when a student logs in, you know, they have this pacing bar that will tell them that they're on pace to complete their course. You know, this is all highly accessible. It'll even go tell them the time in the system that they're spending, their current percentage of their grade, you know, where they are at the course. You can see this student here, and this is a demo student, so this is all made up data. But you know, that's, if we can present the data to the students and have it student facing, you know, we find that students oftentimes, you know, and we put it on them to say, reach out if you don't understand why you're behind pace, or reach out if you don't understand what your grade is. You know, the trick is, like Heidi put, is getting them to take that responsibility. And so we find that that's, you know, there's a couple pieces to that. One is establishing that relationship with the student, that they feel comfortable reaching out, and that they are in that growth mindset, that, you know, they're there to work hard and fix it, you know, and that too, that they trust us, that we're going to help them along the way, that we're going to be compassionate and and give them the resources and tools to either go forward or take a step back, depending on what level the student is. But the more data you can have student facing, we find the more that they're going to want to take responsibility for that data, the more present it is. And I don't ever remember seeing data, sitting in my classrooms just when I got my test back or something like that, maybe. But this is, student facing every day. And even in the course, once they get into the course, they have checklists there for all their learning objects, and it's whatever parts of the lessons they're on, so they know exactly where they're at.
Perfect. So back to Heidi, I just want to ask, because it's a different construct, right? In a lot of schools, if you're using Schoology, it's not going to necessarily show you your pace through a course. It's just showing you instructions and what to do with attachments and links. Maybe instruction, now back out of Schoology and go over here into BrainPop or some other 432 apps. So what is your thought on the student responsibility because of the different navigation that isn't all synchronized together like what Zack was talking about? Any thoughts on that? We're not hearing you, unfortunately. Are you on mute? What's happening? There we go.
Is that better? All right. Yeah. I got kicked out as soon as Zack started sharing his screen. So I'm back in.
I'll go off video next time. Maybe we'll both go off video if he does any sharing.
WebEx entirely crashed. Did not like that at all.
Okay.
But I can speak to the pace and guidance as far as Schoology is concerned. Yeah, it's objects that teachers have put in there. So we've given teachers basically an outline of the outline that we expect them to have in the class, so that students know what's expected of them as far as the activities. We encourage the use of due dates to make sure that those items that are actual assignments stand out for students to see those as pending events. It helps students as far as that organization piece. But no, there is nothing within just a blank Schoology course that is going to speak to adaptation and courseware in the realm of what I glimpsed very briefly of a screenshot that Zack had shared. It's not intended to be. It's intended to be a teacher-friendly distribution point in many cases, as far as here's the documents that we're working with, here's the graphic organizer. We've got a lot of resources that we've got an LTI connection, so you can click right on the connection to see the BrainPop activity right there within Schoology. We try as much as possible to keep kids within Schoology so they're not going out to other things. But the pacing and movement through comes with a fully developed course that we're not at that point right now. But we do feel that it's better than like a Google Classroom, where what you post this year, you can't just save that Google Classroom and reuse it again another year. Whereas with Schoology, your course is archived. You're able to bring in those resources that you've used before. So going forward, that's definitely where we want to go, along with tagging things for content standards so that we know what kids are getting versus what they're not getting by those content tags, and what kids are being successful with and what they're not.
Good. Okay. I understand where you're at with that. That's a good, you painted a good picture. Yeah. So I want to move into these other ones. Let me just share screen and hope I don't lose you. I was a little terrified to share screen for a second there, but hopefully this works. Casey?
All right. Yep, that stayed.
Okay. Okay, good. Oh, so I think we sort of covered this a little bit. Takes responsibility for doing adequate amount of practice.
Hey, Lonnie.
Yeah.
Katie just
Oh,
joined
hi.
us.
Hey, Katie. Okay, good. Well, we've been talking about the standards, but I want to just jump over to you for a second, Katie. We're talking about digital learning experience standards for students and showing them on the screen right now. And we're talking through them, but I want to go over to you and have you do a little intro of yourself and kind of what's happening in your district right now for those, the thinking that around students being, you know, responsible themselves for their digital learning experience. Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Katie Bond, Digital Learning Specialist in Martin County, Florida, which is on the East Coast near Palm Beach County. And we have all of our students back with the exception of those that have tested positive. We have an optional quarantine in the state of Florida where students that have had direct exposure, vaccinated or not, have the choice to come back to school or be quarantined. So we have 19,000 students and we have less than 100 currently quarantined. So we're pretty much all back, but that just changed recently. So we were dealing with a lot of quarantines prior to that changing. But before that, last year, we had probably about 20% of our district that stayed home all year. It was higher at the beginning and lower at the end. So we're kind of dealing with more of like the aftermath at this point. We have our teachers really trying to snap the kids back into regular school where there is accountability and they can't look up everything on their tests and they're not, you know, in a room taking a test with no one looking. So that's kind of where we are right now. We are almost one-to-one. We have grades 3 through 12 are one-to-one. K2, we were not seeing a ton of usage, and to save kind of the headaches and the money, we just have limited devices. K2, we were one-to-one only 9-12 prior to COVID, so we made a big jump up. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome though. You know, it's a heavy lift. I'm sure you guys like had a lot of overtime during all of that, like everyone else. Well, good. Well, in talking about digital learning experience, I'm going to throw you right in early on about these next couple of standards that are in this pile of standards. There's really not that many of them. We got down to 20 of them, but the next pile really has to do with takes responsibility for doing adequate amount of practice. If they're in some sort of a app, requests additional materials or levels or subjects if not sufficiently challenged, and then expects ease of access and equity. I think maybe we should talk the most about this one because before in fully traditional education, you kind of went there and things were done to you. Like you were given your schedule and the bell rang, you went to your next class or whatever, this is your teacher for the year. You didn't have to sort of say, hey, this isn't easy for me. You're not helping me figure this out, and sort of raise your hand and have some agency. So we're in like a whole new landscape of student agency, particularly in the digital sphere. So let's do a round of just talking about that and programs maybe you're enacting to try to drive that more, you know, like help kids understand they need to be responsible for their own agency. And I'm gonna come back to you, Katie, first, and then I'll go to Heidi.
Sure. I think right now it's tough. From what I'm seeing when I talk to teachers, it's been kind of tough because we're still sort of like trying to even get them to, like I had said before, just snap out of that virtual learning and back to real responsibilities. So I think it's going to take a lot to get us back to it, but there's so many good things with those digital materials. Like I look forward to the time when we can use those digital materials where they can take a lot more ownership of their work. I think if teachers can, you know, have the focus be on the kids' work and less be about, because I think a lot of our teachers are struggling, maybe not just in this district, of just they want to get back to what feels normal, and what feels normal to them is them staying in front of the kids and teaching. And it's kind of like, it's, you know, it's not working great. The kids aren't receiving it well. So I think that's an adjustment we all have to make, is we're kind of going to be forced into this world where we have to do more than just stand in front of the kids and talk. We all have known that for years, I'm sure, but now the kids know it now. So yeah, I think that the kids do have a high level expectation of personalization because everything in their world is personalized. So it's going to have to get that way if our teachers don't respond quickly.
Good comments, and totally true. Totally true. Okay, Heidi. Okay, we're not hearing you again for some reason.
I muted myself again. Sorry about
There
that.
you are. It's okay.
I'll get better with that new button down there at the bottom.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because at the beginning of this school year, we had a lot of teachers that somehow had the impression that Schoology was something that we only use during virtual learning. We're in our 4th year of using it. So last year they were kind of forced to use it. Whether they ever had before or not was a different story. But we basically had to lay down the requirements for the teachers. You will be posting assignments electronically in Schoology. As the school year got underway, the first week, we started as far as we don't have optional quarantine in Maryland. There's required quarantine for exposure or positive. And we had positive cases and we've had entire classrooms get shut down. We have not reached the point of entire schools, but the year is young. It seems we've been creeping back up again. So the teachers, while we're not concurrent teaching as we had done in the spring, where teachers were in front, literally they came to a computer with kids on virtual meeting at the same time that they had kids in the classroom, they do need to have their assignments posted online, because when tomorrow comes and 3 kids don't show up because they're on required quarantine, they're supposed to have the same access to the class materials, at least, that the kids in the classroom do. We haven't required direct teacher concurrent teaching this year, but teachers are expected to have a meeting link available for the required quarantine kids to tune in. Whether the teacher actually manages to figure out point of instruction and being in front of the screen or directing their attention to the kids on quarantine is kind of an optional. It may be just a laptop sitting in the corner of the room that the kids can kind of observe from the side, because the ability for teachers to concurrently teach, I mean, we all knew it going into it. There's just so many things that you can do at one time, and teaching virtually is a very different task from teaching kids in the classroom. So expects ease of access. Yeah, the kids expect it. Parents are expecting it. Our challenge has been the teachers and getting that, yep, we're all doing it. We're still doing it. Everything that we did last year is going to continue, and that is not going away, whether it's a pandemic or not. So that's been our heavy lift.
Yeah, that's a challenge, because then you got to worry about audio enhancement when the teacher walks away from the computer, maybe video enhancement. Teachers should be deputizing one of the online kids to make sure comments are getting raised. And somebody should be deputized in the live environment, because splitting your attention in the 2 environments is hard. Yeah, a lot of practices have to change.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from, though. So, cool. Well, you know, the one I want to have you guys all talk about next, and then Zack, I'm going to wrap you in too, is this one. The refuses to compare themselves to others based on earned credits, you know, badging and stickers and, you know, your completed levels and how far you got. This is happening in the courseware side, not necessarily in the lesson stack, you know, like in Schoology or some of the systems. You know, a lot of school districts still using Google Class, and This is becoming a new emerging issue because when you were everyone treated the same by age batch, you know, it's like just your grade. That's the difference between you and another kid. But now you've got comparisons going on, like sub-comparisons within how far you are in brain pop or one of the other things that are going on. Different in Zack's world because Zack is self-paced. So Zack, I'll have you show that in a second. But I'm going to come to you, Katie. Do you have any experience with trying to drive this into students' awareness where, like, you know, no, don't compare yourself because you're at a different reading level and this kid and you got other books to read?
We have some programs here where it is paced based off of the students, you know, how they perform, and it adapts. But I don't know that we really see a lot of kids comparing each other because they're so focused on their work. But it's really more like when they're in that kind of work, they're solo writers. We're not putting it up on the board that, you know, these people made their stars or whatever it is that they're doing. So it's really a lot of private conversations with the parents, students and teachers, you know, and any combination of those. And here's your report of how you're doing. So we don't really see a lot of comparison when it is something like that. That is more of the programs that we use with Fidelity every day or many times per week. They do it at home, like a reading type program. But I could see where if we do put these badges up and we do put these things for display, that it's hard to teach kids not to compare each other on those. And it would really, I feel like, take a really big shift in culture of the school or culture of the classroom, where it's, you know, we're all different, we all have different skills, and that's great. And that's what makes us great, is that we're not all the same. And teaching that intrinsically for, you know, a lifetime, essentially, that's how I see that. It's tough to do.
This is like, this standards is in here by the EduJedi because it's an emerging issue.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So why don't I go to Zack next and then Heidi, about how kind of you guys are doing this. Do you want to just speak to it rather than share screen? Because we could lose Heidi if you share, kind of a thing.
I have that effect on people sometimes, yes. I will say this. I mean, I know that my 7-year-old son, right, is dealing with this. This is absolutely an emerging issue, right? He came home one day or a few days. He's uber competitive. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. He's a super competitive kid, and you know, he came home and I got 500 stars. I get to have lunch with my teacher. I'm the first one to get to have lunch with my teacher on this app. I read X amount of books faster than everybody in my class. And I said, well, okay, well, are you proud of yourself? You know, and does that make you feel proud? And he'll say, yes, I feel very proud of myself. And I'll say, okay, well, you know, what about your friends? You know, how are they coming along, and are they proud of themselves? You know, you try to give them that awareness of everyone should be proud of themselves with where they're at if they're giving that, you know, the correct amount of effort and where the level they are. And I think that's so important. I think it's okay you know, for him to be pushing himself and to be proud of himself. But when you're comparing and you're contrasting and you know, he's starting to get that, I'm going to boast a little bit edge to him, you know, and it's like, okay, hey, you know, the other thing is too, is I ask him to help Johnny along. You know, why don't you support Johnny? Why don't you, you know, next time see if he wants to read a book with you? You know, that kind of a thing. So really developing that community rather than the competitiveness, I think, is important. And you know, and it's such a delicate balance. But for us, we are self-paced. You know, when every click that a student makes for us is a choice. And where there's choice, there's a responsibility, right? And so we don't tell our students that they have to show up for biology at 9 a.m. When they sign in, they're hit with the data, whether they're on pace and what their percentages is, and they have to make that choice. And then really the system and their choices really teach them how their choices affect their pace and their progress. And it's a really fascinating thing. And there are, you know, there's benefits, a lot of benefits to it, but there's also some challenges, as you can all imagine, because sometimes students will disappear completely. And so that is where we really have to rely on data to kind of reach in and pull those students back into play and goal set with them. But you know, with our pacing, and you know, I really enjoyed what you all said, and that expects ease of access and equity. That is so true. I love when kids get keyboard muscles and send us messages like, "Hey, this is wrong." We love it. We're like, "Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Let's fix that." And or you know, "Yeah, this is what's going on." Keyboard muscles are our favorite. We don't like when students are quiet and don't raise a voice. We want to hear from them, and we want to make it, you know, work for them. So we look forward to them reaching out, and they do. Trust me, they do. When there clicks, and it's a personal responsibility for them, and it's a self-paced thing, and it's their work on the line, they will raise their voice when they know they got to get it done. So we welcome them with open arms.
Awesome. Okay, so Heidi.
So we started seeing this right before the pandemic, and during the pandemic and this last summer, it became more of an issue with our high achieving kids, in that the self-paced programs we initially, to encourage and get kids going, the teachers were using time and the amount of time that you had spent as the measure of how well the individuals in the class were doing. Well, that turned into kids spending a lot of time on the program, but not necessarily completing lessons. So we shifted to focusing on how many lessons were completed, with the expectation of one lesson a day. Then the high flyers took that to the extremes of, oh, well, if I can do 5, I can spend my entire Saturday afternoon or my entire summer, it looks like, working on completing lessons, to the point where I know that at this point we've got 2 second graders that have completed the entire K-5 reading curriculum. And we've got kids with the math program that have completed the entire K-5 math curriculum in 2nd and 3rd grade. So that leaves the teachers with like, oh, what do we do with them now during computer time? So the refusing to compare themselves, that's a tough piece to not compare. That's humans do that. We want to know, oh, well, you're taller, you're shorter, you're wider and skinnier, whatever. And it's getting kids to be comfortable with where they're at, I think in so many places and spaces, and not just academics, is an important piece to relate it to kids, that where you are is okay, and you can progress from where you're at. Developing that growth mindset for the kids that don't think they can do it, it's okay, just little bits at a time, and you will get there.
Yeah.
Not sure what else to say as far as that. It's a tough place to get to the point of having all kids refusing to compare themselves, because we do it in so many places and ways in our society that escaping that is just not possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think what all 3 of you are talking about now is really painting the picture of what the future really is going to have to look like, right? Like schools have been losing kids in droves to alternatives and homeschooling, especially the K-2 crowd. And being forced sort of into offering these self-paced programs, which is why Edison, who's online right now, that's grown so phenomenally, because schools are having to attach in those self-pacing things. And then you have this issue, right? But you also have a gift, which is, instead of thinking about all the humans or forcing them into the normalizing pattern of grade, class, move along the manufacturing line, we're for the first time at scale seeing humans for human. Like they're human. They're all different. One of them's way ahead in math and he's way behind in language. What is happening with that kid, right? Like, well, that's that kid. You know, so it's really it's really like Yazna Alfendek told us the other day. She's in Garland ISD. We were out in Dallas, and she said, I want everybody to remove the word normal from their vocabulary. There's no normal anymore, and we're not going back to normal. There's no normal. So normal is over, and let's rethink what we're looking at. Okay, so I think we have a few more minutes to get to another one of these, and that is really this sort of simple, innocent one. We could talk about all of these. I don't think we have enough time, and I want to solicit from you other responsibility standards that may not be in here. But this maintaining a clean device in any attachment, I think this is way harder than the simplicity of this sentence. Because we've got grubby little figures on that touch everything everywhere in our schools, and they've got headsets, they've got their devices, maybe they have other things like robots. This is hard. So let's talk about this for a second. Heidi, I'm going to come back to you first and then go to Katie and Zack.
The sharing of devices, like before the pandemic with our rollout of devices to classrooms, we decided on a 4-to-1 ratio for K2, specifically to make sure that we didn't have the situation of teachers in K2 even having the ability to have every kid in the class staring at a screen at the same time. We wanted to encourage small group participation. With the pandemic and sharing devices, I know we still have teachers right now that are just not even there as far as being able to comfortably give devices to kids more than what we're requiring. So we're requiring the K2 kids 10 minutes each kid math, 10 minutes each kid reading. That's twice that device has to get wiped down from that one student in the classroom. Because we've now got a full classroom of kids, the whole wiping of devices down in between is something that it's part of the new normal, so to speak, in that we all learned how to wash our hands more effectively during the pandemic. But the cleaning of the devices is something that has really been a struggle point for some teachers, as far as they never cleaned them before. We had debates with IT about whether or not you could actually use a Lysol wipe on a screen that was touch screen and not ruin the surface. We've moved past that. Maintaining a shared device continues and will continue to be a challenge. For individual students, grades 3 and up, maintaining their own laptop that they've been issued is obviously much easier, but it's still a challenge as far as if you're taking it home at night, are you also taking the charger home? Are you charging it home at night? Are you bringing both the charger and the device back? And throwing a laptop into a backpack has consequences when there's hard surfaces and book bags are tossed around on buses. So maintaining a clean device is one thing, but how's the screen look? And can you actually see through that tortoiseshell split screen that you've now got because somebody smacked your book bag around? It's a tough place, and kids, I think, have a better sense of taking care of devices because of their experiences at home with their personal devices and their gaming things. But then again, the kids that have those experiences are the kids that have had that benefit at home. We've got lots of kids that don't have gaming at home. We've got lots of kids, I mean, we're an hour outside of DC. We have homes that are not served by high-speed internet. So home use of computers is not normal, so to speak. It doesn't happen in every household because even DSL is not even a suitable option. But if Comcast didn't come down your road in our county, you don't have any other options other than driving to sit outside of a school where we provide Wi-Fi or going to a public library when they're open, which they weren't for most of the pandemic. So putting devices in every kid's hand, 3 to 12, there's been a lot of learning curve as far as taking care of those devices across the board.
Yeah, wow. All right. So, Katie, your comments on this, and then I'm coming to Zack to do a little wrap up, and then we can, be released back into the wild, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is the kids' treatment of the devices. We have to teach them how to maintain them and keep them from breaking as much as they can. We've had to kind of adjust and readjust our processes for when things do break and how much we charge them or don't charge them. And before it was when we were just 9-12 one-to-one pre-COVID, it was I had the one device, and if the screen broke, I turned in that one device and waited for the company to fix it and return it back to me, and I had to pay for it before I got it back. And that could be weeks, it could be a month. By the time the kid actually picks it up, maybe it's even longer. And so now, obviously, that's different when we're expecting every kid to be on a computer all the time. When we were at home, for sure, not quite as much now, but it's, I switch out the device. I check that it's actually broken, and then I give them a different device and say, get out of here. I'm just going to change out the asset tag in your tracking system. And we fix the device later because there's not time to sit and troubleshoot and send it out. We need the kid to have their hands on the device immediately. And so our processes have shifted because of that. And I think I'm not sure that that's good or bad for the kids. Like, the kids know that if it's broken, it'll get replaced right away. And mom and dad are going to pay for it or not pay for it. And so it's kind of interesting to see it from that perspective. We used to think we used to have kind of a general policy, like, don't put stickers on it, don't personalize it. We want to keep it clean, right? That was like a big control thing within the tech department. And now they're saying, like, if there are stickers on it, it makes it so much easier for a kid not to lose it because you know whose it is. Or the brother doesn't take it and the sister doesn't take it because they know whose it is. So it's really evolved quite a bit. And certainly more kids with more devices. We've had to do a lot of teaching them how to carry it, and how, the lower levels, how to carry it with 2 hands and not pick it up by the screen. So yeah, I think it takes a lot of teaching. And in fact, the kids that have devices at home care even less about their school device. They're like, that's my school computer. I have my gaming computer at home. I have my Xbox at home. I care about that. I don't, who cares about the school one? So it's interesting to see all these different components that put this all together. And we just try to communicate with parents and stuff. We've had some parent universities at our district, especially last year, just about accessing things and maintaining these things. And any of the issues that came up, I think that's kind of helped. I mean, we didn't have a huge turnout, but I think continuing to do that may help us with that. A lot of our schools lose headphones on a daily basis. They go through a lot of headphones, is what we hear a lot. They buy the cheap ones and they break immediately, so then they buy the expensive ones because the ports last longer, and sometimes that works. And we're all just kind of trying to figure out what's going to work for today. Tomorrow it seems to be different.
Yeah. You just sort of painted a picture of, like, this is a rocky road. Yeah, kids stand up from even devices that are sitting there and they still have their headphones, and then they try to, run to wherever they're going to go, and they don't remember they have their headsets on, yanks the device, yanks their head back, like the whole thing. Yeah, it's just funny. Okay, well, thanks for that comment. So Zack, we didn't get to a lot of these about hostile characteristics and, things like a student reserving the right to screenshot or snapshot or video clip or file any material. There's a lot here. Do you want to make a final comment?
I just want to say I appreciate the comments earlier, because I mean our situation is so different. We don't deal with devices. So the first thing I did, I don't even know that battle where you're wiping those screens down and sharing devices and dealing with broken screens. And you know, we certainly have you know, quite the advantage on the commercial side, having a system that's in one place that really mimics what a student should be doing. It really has everything organized in it. We have our teachers organizing resources and modeling what this looks like for students. And it really frees us up not to deal with broken screens, not to wipe, you know, screens down between students. It really frees us up to teach students. When we get file attachments sent to us for assessments and they say something like, you know, my stupid homework or something like that, we get to respond back to them and say, you know, you really shouldn't have attachments that say that, and this is why. You should have a naming convention, because, you know, all of our teachers are observed and evaluated on an organization set where they are using naming conventions and have a filing system for their resources that are quickly accessible. And so that's all modeled for our students by our teachers. And like, we're just very lucky to not have to deal with a lot of the physical limitations, you know, just dealing in that digital world. We do get to teach these things, and we do get to model them for students and show them what, you know, that tidy device looks like and how effective it can make your learning, how further you can go in your learning because you have more time, you know, and those kinds of things. So,
yeah, it's good you give us the other perspective. Because like I said, the competitive landscape now is like it went nuclear during the pandemic. It's hard on schools. Well, this has been a great, productive conversation. It really showed me, in terms of these standards, when we put them out again in the reference guide that's coming out in December, we need to do a little tweaking in here. You know, things like broken screens and stuff. You know, we need to mention some of the stuff in here. You know, how you got to be responsible as a student. And, you know, we probably need to reorder some of these. I think just glancing through these, there's a little bit of repetitiveness. But I thank you profusely for your contribution to the EduJedi, you know, momentum that we have going for this reference guide. You guys got to participate in one little window of it. There's been a lot of activity around the instructional design model and all the definitions of terms. But it's also nice to know kind of where you're at and get your update, you know, what's happening for you in your neck of the woods. Kind of mirrors what we're hearing all over the place. So, you know, you're not alone. You know, don't feel lonely. Nationally, you're with your brethren. Everybody's making sure kids are learning something, at least, right? So good. So Heidi, again, thank you so much. It's so good to see you again. It really is.
Sure thing. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Katie, good to see you. And thank you for your contribution. And Zack, thank you. I'm going to release you guys back into the wild. See you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone. Right. Bye for now.